Hello and welcome back to the Mystic in Training podcast with me, your host, Melissa Amos. Today, I wanted to explore something that really goes back to ancient times. And even though this wisdom has been with us for so long, across traditions, across countries, across centuries, across continents, again and again, the same core truths keep appearing. And I was listening to a podcast today called The Ancients Decoded Reality with Chase Hughes. It really got me thinking because I heard him articulate these 5 patterns that just sparked something in me, not because it was new, but because as I was listening to it, I was really seeing how Akashic Reiki, when it was delivered to me, how it encapsulated a lot of these mysteries and a lot of these theories through the work. The patterns that he discussed were: we are not separate, fear is an illusion, the mind shaping reality so that what we think we become. Well, there was a lot of discussion about how the ego is something to be transcended. Maybe a better way to say it is how the ego obscures the truth of what this is, which is just incredible because it's exactly how this came to me in Akashic Reiki. And of course, everything's connected, that as one does something, there is a ripple. And as he was speaking, there was a lot that struck me, but I think it's more that it's not that these truths exist. We've always known that they've existed, we've always heard them. And I think whatever religion or spirituality or cultures you've come from, you've probably heard an iteration of one or another of those, but they've been presented to us as battles, as something that we need to do, as something that has some like moral willingness that needs to happen with it. But actually they're not battles, they're all invitations. An invitation back to remembering who we are, an invitation back to coming into coherence with the truth of who we are, and really this concept of we have this truth, what I call our soul blueprint, and who we are beneath the noise and the distraction and the invitations that are all around us. Let's walk through these 5 ancient ideas and explore what it means, not as concepts, but what it means when we actually live them. The first one, I think that we all know, is this concept of we are all one. It's interesting because whilst that does very much feel like a fundamental truth, all is one. Also, and when we are living and when we are experiencing life, we're living life through our separation, right? We're living life through our own unique viewpoints, through our traits, through our challenges, through our concepts, through the lenses that we see the world through. And I think each of us have our own unique lens. And when we understand that we are all one and that there isn't any separation, I think it gives us this different way of understanding what is my place. I can look at a crystal, for example, and that crystal might have 6 different faces or 6 different facets. And each one is going to give you a slightly different perspective, a different feeling, a different thing to look at, a different shape even and size, yet they're all part of the same oneness. And I think what I've noticed very much in spirituality is we can use the we are all one as a bit of a bypassy thing. I suppose this comes into the shadow of the light. I don't know, maybe all truths exist at once. The second point that he gave was fear is the illusion and love is the truth. There is nothing outside of love and fear isn't real. Now, again, can seem a little bit bypassy, but all of these different traditions were saying that in a way. And I want you to come beyond the words of fear is an illusion. Now, I also want to say this, that my reality, especially recently, especially as I've been like rapidly growing through my work with Akashic Reiki, is that fear for me has been very much an invitation. Fear has very much been this understanding that it's inviting me into something more. When I've heard this without fear can't exist where love is present, I understand that. But it also can then imply that, well, if you fear any fear, feel any fear, then you shouldn't do it. Whereas what I've discovered, especially in the last 18 months, is the more I move towards my fear and I'm almost not fearful of my fear, the stronger I've got to know myself. And so again, does fear not exist? Well, I think fear doesn't exist in the same way that like ego doesn't exist. That it, because it does, it's there. Like if I ask any of you, you're going to say to me, well, yes, this feels very real, right? My heart is pounding or my ego's telling me something. But if we go beyond the words and understand love as a frequency or as even a guiding force that sits beneath us as our default state, I think what it's really saying here is that when we act from our fear, it's taking us more into the illusion. It's taking us more into the separation. When we create from that space, from pure fear, from, well, if I don't do this, like, for example, you know, this whole thing about we should be good citizens and we should be compassionate and thou shalt respect your mother and thy father and thou shalt not steal and, you know, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife and all these commandments that we have, that if we only address them because we think, well, if we don't, we're going to get in trouble, that's one way. But if we address them from love and we address them from truth and we address them from this space of we're not separate, if we address them from the space of love rather than fear, then the act of not coveting thy neighbor's wife or, you know, not stealing becomes the choiceless path. It becomes the thing that we do, because otherwise why would we knowingly hurt our neighbor when we know it hurts ourselves? And he goes on to say that the ego is the real obstacle. And this was kind of where I got a little bit like, okay, so in, you know, the Bhagavad Gita, the Buddhist wisdom, the Taoist wisdom, the Christian teachings, conquer thy lower self, die to yourself, don't be attached. And I get all of that. And yes, it's true. But I also believe that we were perfectly made and that we have come down here on the human plane in order to have very much a human experience. If the ego is really the obstacle, or we're really meant to kill the ego, then why would we have it? Because for me, killing the ego feels like a fear-based strategy, and we're saying that fear is an illusion. So I don't know, that there was something there that just felt a bit, well, actually I was given my ego, and I can speak about ego as personality, as a thing that causes separation, right? This thing that helps me know that I'm me, that brings me into my house instead of my neighbor's house, right? That gets me doing my job, that gives me my identities, that gives me the expression, that tells me which face maybe of the crystal that I am today or in my life. And a massive healing for me has been not seeing the ego as an obstacle, but understanding that the ego is just a part of me and giving it less power. Same with fear, giving fear less power. Understanding fear is here, but giving fear less power, giving it less credence, saying, well, actually, yes, this ego is part of me, but it's not my ruler. It's my vehicle in which I can demonstrate or live or act when I tune into spirit first. And for me, that actually comes on to the next 2 points, which is the mind shapes reality and everything is connected, as above, so below. In the Kabbalistic text, they speak about the tree of life that gives fruit to everything. We know about this in science through quantum entanglement. And we also now know through quantum physics that the observer has a real influence on the outcome of an experiment, right? We've seen these times and times again. And so it's showing us that there's this fundamental thing going on beneath our reality, beneath what it is that we see. And I really think it has something to do with this love, truth, what I call in Akashic Reiki, our divine blueprint, and our programmings, our ego, our fear, our personality, and what I call in Akashic Reiki our overlays, these identities and these strategies that we put in place that help us create life as we know it. And it seems to me that the invitation here is not so much how do I behave well which is very much a mind concept. And we can equal ego to mind. That shouldn't be our ruler. And if we're trying to meet our behaviors just through the concept of mind, just through our psychology, just through our willpower, then we've all been there and it's not very easy. That actually, it seems to me that all of these ancient texts and these ancient wisdoms are actually just inviting us to understand that there's more than one power at play. And with every day, with every moment, with every suffering that happens, with every fear that we face, with every othering that we do, there's always an invitation to come back into, well, who am I? What is it that I am doing? What's the capital T truth in this situation? Am I acting because I am defaulting to the noise and the distractions of the outside world, which are the separation vehicles, if you like, that are separating us from what? From the truth of who we are. And by the way, this is why it all feels so uncomfortable when we're working from that space, when we're working from fear, when we're working from anger, when we're working from other people's view of the world that feels to be out of alignment with ourselves. The reason why it feels so uncomfortable is because they are not you. And so that discomfort, whether through your mind, whether through your body, whether through your emotion, or whether through your physical reality, is there because it's a signal to you saying, hey, there's something that wants to happen here. Hey, there's something that we need to look at here. Hey, there's a new way. And the more you're walking down this path, the further away from the truth of who you are, you're straying, the more into separation you're becoming. And these programmings run so deep that they've become, I don't even want to use the word normal, but they've become so common. And it feels to me that the invitation to all of this is the thing that the Akashic Records probably taught me first, that the purpose of life is to really know yourself. And that sounds very simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. It definitely sounds very simple. But this knowing yourself, how do we know what we are? Sometimes we have to go through, well, now I know what I'm not. And so these outside influences and these outside feelings and these distractions, this noise that is there all of the time, isn't something to fight against or battle against or separate from. Because remember, separation is an illusion. It's about becoming one with it and then really getting truthful with yourself of, well, what is mine and what is not? What is true and what is just something that might feel good in the moment or that is familiar? And I think that's the path. I think that's where all of these knowings of, again, from the ancient texts, that everything's in the present moment. If we are in depression, we're living from the past. And if we're in anxiety, we're living from the future. And every moment is in the present. Because if we get super aware or clear or in tune is probably the better word about what it is that we're doing right now in the moment, what is it that I'm feeling right now in the moment? Where am I coming from? Am I moving from love or fear? Am I moving from truth or programming? Am I moving from past or future? Am I acting this way because it's something that I feel that I should do or because it's the thing to do if we were all one? Am I being kind because my mum taught me that that will get me friends? Or am I being kind because kindness is because just kindness is? Why would I act in any other way? It becomes the choiceless path. It is not a choice. It's a way of being, not to be morally superior, but to be true to who you are. There was a lot that came up. And I think the biggest question comes into, where are we moving from? And that's my invitation for you this week. Just notice through the week, where am I coming from? Am I coming from my signal, my truth, my essence? Or am I moving from the noise that surrounds it? And then, of course, the next natural question is, well, how do I turn down the noise and up the signal? But that's a conversation for another time. For now, I will leave you with that. Enjoy getting to know yourself. I'll see you next time.